Good morning. Buenos días. My name is Jose Carrion. I welcome all to the meeting of the the 17th public meeting of the Financial Oversight and Management Board for Puerto Rico. I would like to ask, welcome to you all. I would like to ask all attendants to please cooperate in conducting a productive meeting, including, as is customary, that we keep cell phones in silent mode and abstain from conversation and comments until the public comments portion of the meeting. I would like to call a roll call. Dr. Biggs?
Present.
Mr. Garcia, are you on the phone?
Yes, I am present.
Welcome. Judge Gonzalez?
Yes, present. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez?
Presente.
Ms. Mato Santos? Aquí. Professor Skeel, are you on the phone?
I am on the phone as well.
Welcome. And of course, the ex officio member, Engineer Diaz Atienza.
Presente.
Welcome. A quorum is present. And now I'd like to call the meeting to order. I would like once again to ask Mr. El Khoury, our General Counsel, to act as Secretary for this meeting.
Yes, thank you.
Let's see, I'd like to recognize the presence of Mr. Marrero, the head of AFAF, and numerous other entities. Thank you all in attendance, and also everyone that is watching the live stream of the meeting via our board's website, www.oversight.pr.gov. I am pleased to say that the audio of the meeting via the webcast is available in English and a simultaneous Spanish translation. Again, if you log into the English website, the audio will be in English, and if you log in to the Spanish website, you will hear the simultaneous translation. Today, we have an exciting agenda. We will begin with the approval of the May 9th public hearing minutes, followed by administrative matters, a report by our Executive Director, Mr. Esco, and then a presentation by the Board of the Plan of Adjustment. Then we shall have public comments on the Plan of Adjustment. Approval of minutes. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes of the board's last public meeting held on the 9th of May, 2019. The proposed minutes are included in your meeting materials, Appendix A. Does anyone have any questions about these minutes?
I would move to approve the minutes of the board's public meeting held on May 9th, 2019 in the form presented to the meeting or with the changes proposed.
Okay. Does anybody second the motion? And we have one abstention.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Ms. Mato Santos is abstaining. She was not at the previous meeting. Okay. The meetings, the minutes are approved unanimously, save one abstention, so it's not unanimous. Okay. Administrative matters. I would like to recognize Mr. Gonzalez.
The board, I'd like to make the following motion, Mr. Chairman. I move that the board confirm and approve the unanimous written consents adopted by the board since the adjournment of the board's last public meeting, which are listed in Appendix B here too.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you. I'd like to ask for a voice vote. Those in favor, please say yes.
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 Thank you. As there being no votes, the resolution has passed unanimously. Mr. Biggs.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the following motion. Resolution: between the adjournment of this meeting and the opening of the board's next public meeting, the board may consider in executive session any and all matters that it is authorized to consider under PROMESA, including 1, any certification determinations authorized PROMESA, including certification determinations under Section 206 of PROMESA, 2, any submissions or authorizations authorized by PROMESA, and 3, any filings authorized under Title III of PROMESA in each case that are set forth as part of the vote to convene such executive session. The board may also act by unanimous written consent between meetings in accordance with the bylaws, with such consent to include consent by email.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to second that motion.
Thank you. I'd like to ask for a voice vote. Those in favor, please say yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Having all voted for the resolution, it is passed unanimously. Now let's proceed to a report by our Executive Director, Mr. Esco, to give us an update on our work since the last public meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since our 16th public board meeting held in May of 2019, the Oversight Board certified fiscal year 2020 budgets for the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority, the Puerto Rico Aqueduct and Sewer Authority, the Highways and Transportation Authority, the University of Puerto Rico, and COFINA. All these budgets are in full force and effect. Following our May announcement of the decision to cover under PROMESA and require fiscal plans from CRIM to outline a series of measures that would improve collections without additional taxes and to develop draft fiscal plans with the 10 municipalities. The Oversight Board is prepared to present a CRIM fiscal plan in the upcoming weeks. Municipality fiscal plans will follow, as we have been visiting the municipalities and working with the mayors to better understand their realities. I want to personally thank all the mayors for their commitment to this process. The board has also publicly issued support for recent congressional initiatives that would benefit the people of Puerto Rico, such as equitable treatment for Medicaid, a federal match for the local earned income tax credit, as well as support for a series of legislation proposed by Congresswoman Jennifer Gonzalez. On July 31st, the Oversight Board released the fiscal year 2019 annual report and sent it to the Governor of Puerto Rico, the legislature, the U.S. Congress, and the U.S. President, as required by PROMESA. Since Governor Wanda Vázquez took office mid-August, we have engaged in a collaborative working relationship with her and her team. In addition to 3 working meetings with the governor and our board, we have held dozens of meetings amongst the government team on fiscal plan and budget implementation. On August 12th, the Oversight Board designated $5.3 million in an expansion of the Fajardo Municipal Landfill as a critical project under the Title V of PROMESA. The Fajardo Municipal Landfill serves as the primary municipal and commercial disposal site for the northeastern region of Puerto Rico, serving 9 municipalities. Over the past month, we have been working with AFAF and FOMB to better understand the special education and correctional department needs. It is important to note that both the Department of Education and Department of Corrections concluded fiscal year 2019 underspending their budgets in personnel as well as in capital expenditure areas in some cases. Thus, more detailed analysis of the actual needs is necessary to determine what the situation currently requires. Last week, the government released the first ever tax expenditure report, which was prepared at the request of the Oversight Board and a requirement of the Certified Fiscal Plan. This report gives never-before available transparency into the cost of tax expenditures, which now gives Puerto Rican society the information with which to debate the value and the return of each incentive and the priorities of government spending. In terms of the Oversight Board's operations, we continue to augment our internal Puerto Rican staff capabilities. From 27 employees in May, we are now 40 and will continue to hire to reduce the use of consulting firms and to build the Puerto Rican experience and fiscal management capacity. Lastly, following today's announcement, we will begin a series of town halls across the island to connect with the people of Puerto Rico and explain the ongoing work of the Oversight Board. Thank you.
I would like to presentation of by us.
You need your microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Long night. A presentation by the Board of the Plan of Adjustment. I would like to begin by offering some context on why we are here this morning. Before PROMESA, Puerto Rico faced an unmanageable debt burden and had no tools to restructure it. A reality of over $70 billion in debt and $50 billion in unfunded pensions that no other territory in the U.S. had ever seen. The people of Puerto Rico faced the threat of having to risk public services in order to pay a bill that was unfairly put on them by decades of poor financial management. In 2016, Promesa, although not perfect, provided Puerto Rico with an opportunity to reset this reality. The compromise between both sides of the aisle provide the island with a novel mechanism to restructure its debt was certainly not easy to achieve. The leadership at the time of Promesa's adoption and key figures such as Congresswoman Nidia Velázquez, who's always been there for Puerto Rico, and Congressman Rob Bishop fought hard to ensure Puerto Rico had a way out of its fiscal mess. This fiscal reality, however, was not only caused by the excessive issuance of debt and the failure to adequately fund Puerto Rico's pension systems. During the past years, we have worked better to understand the reality of our government. I would like to ask my colleague and board member, Jose Ramon Gonzalez, to provide some context on this particular reality.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you rightly mentioned, the unsustainable debt burden is not the only unfair reality that the people of Puerto Rico have had to deal with for the past few decades. Unfortunately, poor public financial management cost years of inefficient spending and poor government services. If you ask most Puerto Ricans whether they're getting their money's worth in terms of public services, most would certainly agree they do not. Puerto Rico's new demographic reality, coupled with technological advances, call for a smaller, more manageable, and more efficient government. A government that provides better services for less cost. Using the tools in Promesa, the fiscal plans, and the annual budgets, the Oversight Board has sought to outline a path towards a more efficient government by undergoing benchmarking analysis, comparing Puerto Rico to other jurisdictions. The reality is that spending more for the sake of spending does not bring more efficient services. Better government services require tough work and project management skills, but the people of Puerto Rico deserve no less. Moreover, it requires the hard work of prioritizing government spending into areas that really make a difference. A clear example of this is what the Oversight Board has been doing at the Department of Public Safety by reducing administrative costs so that we can, in turn, afford higher salaries for the police themselves. Notwithstanding the demographic reality, the transition into a pay-as-you-go pension system and the fast-growing healthcare costs present an impending constraint that both the Oversight Board and the government have had to deal with, given their relevance and size within the Commonwealth's budget. Therefore, it is important that we establish an adequate level of spending that will allow the government to sustainably afford pensions, healthcare, education, and public safety for its people in the long term. The Oversight Board's focus on demanding the government's transformation into a more efficient one go hand in hand with our focus on transparency. Transparency allows the public to understand where the taxpayers' dollars are going and whether the government is effectively using public funds to deliver services. As we continue our work, we hope that the increased transparency, together with the fiscal discipline that we have tried to communicate to the government, and that has resulted from the Oversight Board's work in the last 3 years, will lead civil society to engage in public discussions as to the best use of public funds and whether the services the people of Puerto Rico deserve are being provided. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. A sad component of the fiscal reality that we face since we started our work is the unfortunate reality of Puerto Rico's pension systems. I would like to ask colleague and board member Dr. Andrew Biggs to provide some remarks regarding this reality.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Although Puerto Rico's pension systems are managed independently, Puerto Rico's pensions share similar causes of their collective insolvency. These causes include employer contributions that are inadequate to meet actuarial funding requirements, special laws granting additional benefits without adequate funding for those benefits, more than 20 early retirement programs offered to workers, and a menu of mortgage, personal, and cultural loans offered to plan participants that pulled liquidity out of the systems. In terms of employer contributions, despite calculations that concluded significantly larger amounts were needed to meet actuarially determined pension payment obligations in the future, the laws of Puerto Rico continue to allow employers to allocate far less than that critical level. Further, even when laws were enacted to increase employer funding contributions, these funding requirements were not always met. Early retirement programs also eroded system solvency. Although these programs reduced the government's payroll, they also increased the forecasted pension payout by moving pension payouts forward in time. At the same time, early retirement programs deprived the systems of critical payroll-based employee and employer contributions that would have increased the assets available to fund future benefits. Demographic trends and increases in life expectancies also increased the forecasted pension payouts. An increase in life expectancy caused retired pensioners to receive benefits for more years longer than originally expected. Based on the actuarial valuation report produced in 1965 for ERS, for instance, the life expectancy for collecting pensions was 22.6 years for men and 26.7 years for women. By 2019, that expected amount of payment years had increased by 35% for men to 30.6 years, and by 30% for women to 33.4 years. Special laws also impacted solvency. These are post-employment benefits incremental to the original benefit structures. Many of the special laws were introduced and approved throughout the years without the enactment of long-term viable funding sources. The various benefit enhancements and special law benefits include everything from ad hoc increases and various bonuses to cost of living adjustments and medical plan contributions. Unlike most other jurisdictions, these special law benefits were also structured to be paid in part by the retirement systems and in part by the member's employer. Contributions to the system administered benefits were not always sufficient, and as a consequence, plan assets were frequently used to fund these special benefits. All these actions and others led to an inevitable outcome: the contraction of the active workforce, the lengthening of life expectancies, insufficient funding, both based on law and also actuarial estimates, and the inability of the trust portfolios to keep pace with pension disbursements led to these trusts to insolvency and a need for the central government to step in and directly pay pension benefits under the pay-go policy. As such, starting with the first budget certified by the Oversight Board for fiscal year 2018, Puerto Rico's budget has included the payment of pensions through the pay-go system. More than 20% of Puerto Rico's general fund now goes to pay Puerto Rico's pensioners.
Thank you, Dr. Biggs. Since the adoption of the Promesa Law, the Oversight Board has been consistent in its focus to restructure Puerto Rico's debt so that it is sustainable, and for this path to be once and done approach. The path to a sustainable debt has not been easy. All sectors involved in this reality have come to the table to find reasonable middle grounds of compromise to put this behind us. This morning, the Oversight Board filed the Plan of Adjustment for the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, a plan to emerge from the bankruptcy-like state Puerto Rico is in right now. A plan that would lower Puerto Rico's debt to sustainable levels, a plan that would ensure pensions and take care of our retirees for 30 years to come. Massive debt is what caused Puerto Rico so much pain and what is holding Puerto Rico's economic recovery back. That massive debt did not result in massively improved public safety, public health, or public education. It is a huge toll on the life of everybody who lives on this island, and it is what denies us the stability Puerto Rico needs to rebuild its future and achieve prosperity. The Plan of Adjustment the Oversight Board filed today is the beginning of a process that enables our people to reach their potential, where businesses large and small can have the confidence they need to invest and expand with certainty, and where the people of Puerto Rico can expect their government to provide safety, education, and the public services the island needs. It is an important first step. Now I would like to ask my colleague, Judge Gonzalez, to begin the presentation of the recently filed Plan of Adjustment for the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the Puerto Rico Buildings Authority, and the Employees Retirement System of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, and other related actions. Judge?
Thank you, Chairman Carry-On. I apologize to all that I'm not be able to be there today in person. The proposed plan of adjustment filed today by the Oversight Board under Promesas Title III in the United States District Court for the District of Puerto Rico provides, among other things, a framework to reduce the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico's debt to a sustainable level and is a milestone on Puerto Rico's path to emerge from the Title III cases. The plan of adjustment restructures general obligation bonds, clawback claims against the Commonwealth, PBA bonds, ERS bonds, the Commonwealth's pension liabilities, and general unsecured claims against the Commonwealth, PBA, and ERS. We also filed a proposed disclosure statement for the Commonwealth, ERS, and PBA. The disclosure statement contains considerable historical and current information about the Commonwealth, ERS, and PBA. The disclosure statement filed with the plan of adjustment is an essential part of the plan of adjustment confirmation process. The purpose of the disclosure statement is to provide adequate information such that those parties impacted by the plan can make an informed decision about the plan. It contains quite extensive information so the people of Puerto Rico and creditors can review and learn about the problems that triggered Puerto Rico's financial and economic stress, the issues raised, rulings of the trial and appellate courts, and a proposed treatment of claims the Oversight Board has formulated for retirees, union, general obligation creditors, and general creditors. Sometime in the months ahead, the court will schedule a hearing for parties who wish to be heard as to whether the disclosure statement contains the required adequate information. When the court determines the disclosure statement contains adequate information, it will be distributed to all creditors whose claims against the Commonwealth, ERS, or PBA are impacted by the plan so they may make informed decisions as to whether to vote to accept or reject it. It should be anticipated that creditors who believe their claims are not adequately paid will interpose objections to confirmation. The confirmation hearing could be an extensive hearing depending on how many more agreements we are able to negotiate between now and the time of such hearing. It is important as well that all parties understand that the Oversight Board is continuing to negotiate with creditors and hopes to enter into more agreements in the coming months. The main purpose of the proposed plan of adjustment is a restructuring of the Puerto Rico debt to sustainable levels to help ensure that Puerto Rico is not overburdened by its debt as it seeks to emerge from these Title III cases, and then is able to achieve as well fiscal responsibility. It should also be recognized that the instant proposed plan of adjustment covers 3 debtors. PREPRA and HTA cases are not included. Their restructurings are proceeding on separate tracks at this time. As our chairman has said, today we have taken an important and essential step towards a meaningful and fair resolution of the debt crisis that has overburdened Puerto Rico and its people. I will now turn to our Executive Director, Natalie Jaresco, to provide an overview of the proposed plan of adjustment.
Thank you, Judge Gonzalez. As the chairman and you have said today, it's a very important day for Puerto Rico. The proposed plan of adjustment that we have presented in the U.S. District Court for the District of Puerto Rico provides a framework to resolve $35 billion of debt and $50 billion of pension liabilities. Those numbers are so often repeated that some of you might have taken them as almost normal by now. Some may be numb to them, but those are huge numbers. It is more than the entire gross domestic product of the Dominican Republic or Guatemala. It's larger than the bankruptcy of General Motors in 2009, and we need to resolve it. The proposed plan has 10 key points. 1, it reduces $35 billion in Commonwealth liabilities to $12 billion. 2, it ensures sustainable and affordable annual debt service of less than 9% of government revenue, as compared to 28% prior to Promesa. 3, it ensures that 74% of current and future retirees, pensioners, do not get cut. It establishes a trust supporting pensions for 30 years. 5, it provides predictability to public employees via collective bargaining agreements. 6, it restores $1.3 billion of withheld employee contributions to Sistema 2000. 7, it creates a mechanism to settle claims against challenged bonds. 8, it creates a mechanism to restore those pension cuts if, in any fiscal year, surpluses are greater than projected. 9, it allows local retail bondholders to elect bonds with monthly interest payments. And 10, it establishes a debt management policy to ensure that Puerto Rico never again finds itself in this situation. Overall, it is important to remember that this plan represents a series of compromises on the part of various stakeholders who all recognize the need to move Puerto Rico out of Title III and toward a future of prosperity. All supporters of this plan have compromised for the good of the people of Puerto Rico. The plan of adjustment has 5 main elements of debt restructuring: the debt of the central government, the debt of the Public Buildings Authority, the debt of the employees' retirement system, clawback claims against the Commonwealth, as well as general unsecured claims against the Commonwealth, PBA, and ERS. Combined, those 5 elements are the $35 billion in claims, which the plan of adjustment seeks to reduce by more than 60%. The plan would significantly reduce debt service, which was contractually $82 billion over the next 30 years, to $44 billion. And taken together with the debt of COFINA, which we already restructured earlier this year through the Title III process, the amount the government would have to spend each year on servicing its debt would fall from a maximum of $4.2 billion to $1.5 billion, a substantial reduction that leaves Puerto Rico with an amount it can sustainably afford over the next 30 years. The Oversight Board has, over months of very tough negotiations, secured the support of 3 critical stakeholder groups for this plan of adjustment: the Official Committee of Retirees, or CORE, which represents retired government employees; the Lawful Constitutional Debt Coalition, or LCDC, which is a group of investors and funds who hold Puerto Rico's general obligation bonds and PBA bonds; and third, a group of current government employees represented by the Public Service Union, the Puerto Rico chapter of AFSCME. The agreement with retirees restructures pension liabilities for the long term, protects more than 74% of current and future retirees from any reduction, and ensures a reasonable reduction in pensions overall. Pensioners are considered unsecured creditors under PROMESA's Title III restructuring process, whose treatment under a plan of adjustment will have to be approved by a court. And that is what makes our consensual agreement with the CORE such an important element of this plan of adjustment. We agreed with the CORE to a flat 8.5% pension cut in which no one will have their total monthly retirement benefits reduced below $1,200. We also agreed that the Commonwealth would establish a pension reserve fund for the PAYGO pension system to support pension payments over the next 30 years. The trust ensures that pensions, even when the economic or political environment change, and we will discuss that trust in detail later today. The agreement with certain bondholders includes meaningful reductions of the par value of Puerto Rico's outstanding bonds and sustainable, affordable debt service payments over the next 30 years. The plan of adjustment also provides an option to settle to holders of the $6 billion in bonds the Oversight Board is challenging as unconstitutional as a result of the independent review of Puerto Rico's debt by Cobra and Kim. Settling this issue would save Puerto Rico time and considerable litigation costs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Esco. Now, I would like to ask our colleague and board member, Ana Mato Santos, to discuss in detail the support of the SPU AFSCME in detail.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All residents of Puerto Rico deserve a decent standard of living. For too long, subsequent governments have approved laws reducing benefits and freezing wages for public employees. The reality is that payroll freezes, while needed during these difficult times and needed into the future, have been in place since 2009, and they've put a terrible burden on public workers. While the cost of living in Puerto Rico continues to rise, salaries remain constant, and the real take-home pay for our workers continues to decline. In the past 10 years, around 10 laws have been approved to reduce benefits and to freeze wages. Since 2009, these wage freezes have led to a loss of purchasing power in excess of 16%. As we think about the solution to Puerto Rico's fiscal and debt crisis, we need to all be part of the solution. The Oversight Board and the Public Servants United of Puerto Rico, SPU, AFSCME, Council 95, reached an agreement that secures collective bargaining agreements, protects workers from further pension compensation cuts, provides workers with bonuses, and ensures savings projected in the fiscal plan are achieved. It provides certainty in terms of reductions and certainty in terms of wages and benefits, where subsequent changes are subject to negotiation process. It is a critical element to reach a court-approved plan of adjustment for the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico and to exit from bankruptcy. It shows that all stakeholders are part of this plan and are supportive of implementation of the certified fiscal plan that makes the plan possible. The Oversight Board seeks to broaden active employee support after filing the plan of adjustment. Let me give you some context as to why we did this. The agreement covers over 11,000 active public employees and union members in 8 agencies of the government of Puerto Rico. Sistema 2000 was originally intended to provide retirees with an employee-funded retirement benefit with notional interest credit. Sistema 2000, which was funded 100% with employee contributions, was depleted, and its assets and none of the mandatory contributions exist. None of the notional interest was actually earned. The agreement with SPU includes the following benefits. Number 1, collective bargaining agreements will remain in effect for 5 years, reflecting labor terms in the fiscal plan. Number 2, guarantees stability in the working conditions of employees and prevents further cuts to workers' benefits. Number 3, any bonus or economic benefit to public employees lawfully granted by the government will also apply to SPU members. So this represents the baseline of treatment for these employees. If the situation improves, their situation can improve. At least 1.3 billion of employees' contributions to Sistema 2000 will be restored. Number 5, a signing bonus of 1,000 to all SPU members that ratify the agreement. Number 6, employer contributions to all medical plans set at $170 per month rather than the $125 provided in the fiscal plan. Number 7, establishes a $5 million trust for healthcare to support transition of employees for whom $170 per month is below their current benefit. Number 8, affiliates may keep the right to negotiate the single medical plan, and they will not have to be changed to the government's health plan. Number 9, if government outperforms the fiscal plan, 25% of the excess will be allocated to employees, creating incentives for employees to help government work to operate more efficiently. The agreement with SPU is the first agreement in support of the proposed plan of adjustment, but it is certainly not the last one. As you might recall, we also negotiated a preliminary agreement with the Asociación de Maestros, represented nationally by the American Federation of Teachers. Unfortunately, La Asociación was not able to secure the majority vote in support of the agreement with the Oversight Board. Therefore, the plan of adjustment does not provide members of the Asociación de Maestros with any of the benefits that have been negotiated, including bonuses. It leaves teachers with higher healthcare contributions, without the signing bonus, and without the security of collective bargaining agreements, or without the ability to be able to participate in an upside bonus. However, we are hopeful that with the filing of the proposed plan, that La Asociación de Maestros and other employee associations reconsider engaging with us, and some other entities are actually currently actively negotiating with the board. For the prosperity of all government employees, for certainty, for the future of Puerto Rico, it is important to move on and to leave the state of financial distress behind, to build a more secure future for Puerto Rico. The secure future can only be built by working hand in hand with the public sector employees who are critical to the success of the island. For too long, so much was taken away that we look forward to the opportunity to continue these discussions, to build on agreements to date, and to work together to pave a stronger and more certain future for the island.
Thank you, Mrs. Matasantos. Now, I would like to ask for Mr. Sean Gums, advisor to the Official Committee of Retirees, to present the details of the pension trust included as part of the proposed plan of adjustment submitted to the court today.
I believe Mr. Gums is on the phone. Sean?
Okay.
Yes, I am on the phone. Thank you very much. Good morning. Hopefully everyone can hear me. My name is Sean Gums, and I'm a Senior Managing Director at FTI Consulting. We serve as Financial Restructuring Advisor to the Official Committee of Retired Employees of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, otherwise known as the CORE. The CORE and the Oversight Board entered into a plan support agreement dated June 7, 2019, and of course that agreement and its proposed treatment of accrued pension benefits has been incorporated into the plan of adjustment to Puerto Rico that was just filed by the Oversight Board. The Retiree Committee has and will continue to engage directly with our constituents, the retirees of the former ERS, TRS, and JRS systems, to explain the plan support agreement that we negotiated with the board. But I am speaking today because I've been asked by the board to highlight that one very important component of the agreement that would establish the Pension Reserve Fund and provide for potentially billions of dollars of funding into this reserve to provide assurance that pensions can and will be paid well into the future. Throughout the Title III proceedings, the Retiree Committee has repeatedly heard from our constituents about their concern and lack of confidence that their pension benefits will be paid in the future, given that the Commonwealth is currently paying their benefits on a pay-as-you-go basis, also known as PAYGO. The Pension Reserve Fund is designed to address this very issue and to provide comfort to current retirees as well as active employees who are future retirees that the monies in this reserve will be available in the future solely for the purpose of paying pension benefits, even when the Commonwealth is projected to experience cash flow deficits approximately 17 years from now based on the currently certified fiscal plan. The monies in the Pension Reserve Fund are separate from and incremental to the Commonwealth's annually budgeted PAYGO expenses. The Pension Reserve Fund, if funded as projected, will function as a backstop to be used only when needed to ensure that retirees continue to receive their well-earned pension benefits throughout their retirement. So I have a couple of slides, and I'd ask that the first slide be put on the screen now. I want to walk through the basic outline of how the Pension Reserve Fund will work. One, the Pension Reserve Fund will be formed pursuant to the plan of adjustment as a trust, independent from the Puerto Rico government, and it will be independently managed and conservatively managed. Two, it will receive potentially billions of dollars in funding from Puerto Rico's revenues. And assuming that actual fiscal plan surpluses are as projected in the certified fiscal plan, with adjustments to reflect the estimated impact of the Retiree Committee PSA, the Pension Reserve Fund will receive $5.8 billion during the period from fiscal 2020 to fiscal 2027, a period in which Puerto Rico is expected to generate meaningful cash flow surpluses on an annual basis. To be clear, the dollars flowing into the reserve fund would occur after taking into account contemplated Commonwealth debt service and the plan of adjustment, a cash cushion for the Puerto Rico government, and of course after all budgeted government operating expenses, including the payments of current pensions under PAYGO. So the chart on the screen shows the pro forma 5/9 certified fiscal plan surpluses from fiscal 2020 to 27. And during this period, assuming pro forma forecasted performance becomes actual performance, the Pension Reserve Fund will see annual deposits ranging from a high of $1.33 billion in 2020 to a low of $433 million in fiscal 2021, for a total of approximately $5.8 billion over the period. In order to allow for these dollars in the reserve fund to generate investment returns over many years, there will be a lockup period before funds are even eligible to be withdrawn by the Puerto Rico government. And this lockup period will coincide with the period in which Puerto Rico has projected surpluses in the fiscal plan. So based on the current certified fiscal plan, this lockup period will remain in place until 2037, or around 17 years from the commencement of funding in fiscal 2020. So I'd ask that the second slide be put up, please. And assuming that there are annual investment returns in the 2 to 4% range, the $5.8 billion of funding can grow to as much as $7.6 to $10 billion by fiscal 2037 before the Puerto Rico government is eligible to withdraw any money. And so after this lockup period, the government may be eligible to withdraw monies from the reserve fund solely for the purpose of paying pensions. However, the government must meet certain restrictive criteria before those funds can be withdrawn. And the idea behind that is to ensure that the government has explored other methods to pay pension benefits before making a withdrawal request. For example, the Puerto Rican government's unrestricted cash balance would need to be below a certain threshold of $2 billion, and the government would have to experience an actual annual fiscal deficit in that year before any money from the pension reserve could be withdrawn. So if the government does meet the restrictive criteria for withdrawal, there'll also be strict rules to ensure that the funds are used to pay pension benefits to retirees only and not for any other purpose. And there'll also be limits on how much can be withdrawn in any given year. And the idea behind that is to ensure that the pension reserve fund may be preserved for as long as possible. So as I stated at the outset of my comments, the retiree committee has and will continue to engage directly with our constituents to explain the totality of the plan support agreement we negotiated with the board. But I do want to thank the board for giving us the opportunity to discuss the important multi-billion-dollar pension reserve fund component of the agreement today. Ultimately, the pension reserve fund will benefit the Puerto Rico government, retirees, and all other stakeholders as the eventual partial funding of pension benefits from investment returns generated by the fund will free up other Commonwealth resources in later years to be used for other important purposes. The Retiree Committee views the establishment of the Pension Reserve Fund pursuant to our plan support agreement and the plan of adjustment as a highly positive outcome for our constituents and a rare opportunity to contribute hard dollars to permanently solving Puerto Rico's pension crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gums, for your presentation. Do any members of the board have any questions or comments regarding the presentation? Great. Now I would like to ask Judge Gonzalez to lead a discussion on the bond validity challenges and related litigation. Judge?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, under PROMESA, the Oversight Board has a duty to undertake a careful review of any potential legal infirmities of the debt that was issued by Puerto Rico and its various agencies and instrumentalities. A special investigation committee of the Oversight Board was formed by the board, and it hired Kobe & Kim, a law firm, to conduct a comprehensive study of Puerto Rico's debt and its relationship to the financial crisis. In light of the Kobe & Kim findings, the Oversight Board immediately created a special claims committee to determine whether any of Puerto Rico's debt should be challenged and to bring any other litigation involving the debt. As a result of this careful review, in January 2019, the Oversight Board, together with the UCC, objected to the validity of over $6 billion of general obligation bonds as exceeding the debt limit in Article 6, Section 2 of the Puerto Rico Constitution. The challenge bonds include all GO bonds backed by the full faith and credit of Puerto Rico, issued by Puerto Rico in 2012 and 2014. This challenge
Judge? David, are you on the line?
I'm sorry, there's technical difficulties. I'm back. I apologize
No
again.
worries. Go
This
ahead.
challenge was followed by other legal challenges filed by other parties to additional bond issuances. The official committee of unsecured creditors challenged the validity of $2.1 billion of GO and PBA bonds issued in and after March 2011, as well as on the basis of exceeding the constitutional debt limit. The UCC and the official retiree committee challenged the validity of over $3 billion of bonds issued by the employee retirement system of the government of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, ERS, asserting that ERS lacked the authority to issue bonds. And an ad hoc group of bondholders argued that if the arguments in the Oversight Board's objections are sustained, then certain GO and PBA bonds issued from and after 2009 may be invalid. The Oversight Board and the UCC also, as well, filed an underwriter complaint against over 20 banks, law firms, and other parties to recover fees they earned when they helped Puerto Rico and certain of its instrumentalities issue nearly $9 billion of bonds. The underwriter complaint alleges that these parties aided and abetted the government's development bank's breach of its fiduciary duty to the people of Puerto Rico and, as a result, were unjustly enriched by receiving hundreds of millions of dollars in fees. The Oversight Board and the UCC filed several hundred complaints against entities to recover payments they received on account of the bonds that are being challenged in the Title III cases. The Oversight Board initiated the clawback litigation against large bondholders who own at least $2.5 million worth of the challenged bonds. If the objections to the validity of the challenged bonds are successful, then payments of the purported principal and interest may constitute fraudulent transfers that may be recovered by Puerto Rico. When determining whether to object to the validity of the GO bonds and commence a related litigation, the Oversight Board, through its special committee, considered its fiduciary responsibility to challenge the debt that violates Puerto Rico law. The laws of Puerto Rico limit government borrowing authority for reasons to prevent the government from obligating Puerto Rico, its instrumentalities, and its people to a level of debt that cannot be repaid without sacrificing services necessary to maintain the health, safety, and welfare of Puerto Rico and its people. Meaningful distinction between valid debt and debt subject to the validity challenge is a foundation of the proposed plan of adjustment. The proposed plan of adjustment provides holders of challenged bonds an ability to elect, on the one hand, to settle the bond validity litigation to accelerate the resolution of these claims and reduce litigation expenses for both Puerto Rico and its bondholders, or, on the other hand, to litigate the bond validity challenges and related litigation after the plan of adjustment is confirmed. Bondholders electing to settle agree to accept a reduction in recoveries on account of bondholder claims as a resolution of the bond validity litigation. The reduction in recoveries and/or the form of plan consideration is dependent on the potential litigation risk for each series of challenged bonds. Bondholders electing to litigate agree to accept recoveries determined by the outcome of the litigation. The proposed settlement provides for a meaningful reduction in the outstanding Puerto Rico debt, while at the same time preserves the bond validity and challenges and related litigation for those bondholders and other creditors who choose not to participate in the settlement. That concludes my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Judge. And now let's move on, and I would like to welcome PJT Partners, one of our advisors, to present details on the litigation trust concept included as part of the proposed plan of adjustment. Welcome. Could you please identify yourself for purposes of the record?
Can everyone on the phone please try and mute their lines? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just a little closer.
My name is Willie Everts. I work at PJT Partners. I'm here with Steve Zellen, and we're advisors to the Oversight Board. The litigation trust concept that was included in the current plan support agreement and the plan that was filed this morning addresses the bond validity challenges that were discussed by Judge Gonzalez. I'll quickly summarize some of the key items that were discussed by Judge Gonzalez and Ms. Duresco in the course of these remarks. First, the plan of adjustment was structured in order to delay the litigation of the 2012 and 2014 GO bonds until after plan confirmation in order to facilitate the negotiation with creditors. Furthermore, as described on the slide, the plan provides for base recoveries for GO bondholders of 64%, with additional upside from the savings from the settlement and invalidity of the 2012 and 2014 bonds, and excess cash available at plan confirmation. The plan further provides 2012 and 2014 holders with two options. First, they can settle. Bondholders who wish to settle are provided the option to settle their 2012 bonds at 45% or their 2014 bonds at 35%. However, holders also have the option to not settle and litigate the validity of their claims. And for that, the plan provides the entirety of the consideration that they would have received were those bonds pre-2012 bonds in a litigation trust. I'll walk through the structure of the litigation trust on the following page. Starting on the left side of the page, we lay out the total size of the pre-2012 GO and PBA bonds, which have approximately $11 billion in total claims. The 2012 and 2014 GO and PBA claims have approximately $7.5 billion. As you see on the left, at plan confirmation, the vintage, in other words, pre-2012 GOs and PBAs receive 64% on confirmation. However, 2012 and 2014 bondholders are provided the two options that I described on the previous page. The settling parties, as you can see in the middle of the page, are provided the two options. 2012 holders can settle at 45%, and 2014 holders can settle at 35%. That provides incremental savings, as shown in the two sort of light blue boxes in the middle of the page, the 19% and 29%. That's the settlement savings that goes to the pre-2012 bondholders and also the Commonwealth. So you can see at the bottom that the settlement savings are distributed 2/3 to bondholders and 1/3 to the Commonwealth. On the right, as I described before, the non-settling parties are also given the opportunity to litigate the validity of their claims. That 64% is placed into a litigation trust. Should the claims be valid, the 2012 and 2014 bonds receive the entirety of their recovery as though they were pre-2012 holders. However, if the claims are invalid, again, that litigation trust is shared 2/3 with pre-2012 bondholders and 1/3 with the Commonwealth. In other words, providing in both instances Commonwealth recovery from the invalidity of the bonds. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now let's ask our do any members of the board have any question for our witness? No? Thank you. Thank you once again. Now I'd like to ask our executive director for some closing remarks on the plan of adjustment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So why is this the plan of adjustment we chose to file? We chose to file because we believe this is the best plan for Puerto Rico. It ensures the end of Title III in a way that is affordable and sustainable over the next 30 years. We wish this to be once and done and not to return to this difficult state of solvency again 10 or 15 or 25 years from now. If this plan is approved by the court, pensions will be supported, and the Puerto Rican government will spend less than $1 of each $10 of taxpayer money that it receives paying debt, down from almost $3 of each 10 pre-Promesa. We continue to negotiate with other groups to build an even stronger coalition of supporters of those willing to step forward and close this chapter of financial distress. There may be amendments to the plan of adjustments as we bring these additional stakeholders to support the plan. And we remain committed to negotiations with bondholders who may yet support Puerto Rico in this effort to secure an affordable level of debt and to rebuild a path to renewed prosperity. We hope to confirm this plan in the Title III court in the first half of 2020. What is legally required for the plan of adjustment to be approved by the court? We need to demonstrate to the judge that the plan is fair and equitable, and we believe this plan is fair and equitable because it restructures Puerto Rico's debt and pension liabilities in a way that provides reasonable compensation to creditors without endangering Puerto Rico's fiscal future, while ensuring pensions and enabling Puerto Rico's renewed growth. The plan enables Puerto Rico to make the investments needed to prosper. Promesa also says the court must consider whether the plan is in the best interests of all creditors collectively. That means retirees, bondholders, other creditors, rather than in the best interest of only one group, one single group of any creditor. In addition, this plan needs to be feasible to Puerto Rico, for Puerto Rico to be approved by a judge. And that means the government's income and expense projections that are the basis for how the Oversight Board determined the payments to creditors are realistic and reliable. The Oversight Board determined that a reduction of debt payments by Puerto Rico from $4.2 billion maximum a year to $1.5 billion is realistic and affordable. And we have worked with the government to make the size and cost of government in Puerto Rico reasonable while improving government service delivery. Without these tests, fair and equitable, best interest, feasibility, Puerto Rico cannot proceed to exit Title III. That is why the consensual support from retirees, public employees, and bondholders is so important to lift the cloud that endangers all our future well-being. With the support of these groups, the Oversight Board demonstrates that we are striking a fair balance in the best interest of all parties for a realistic restructuring that Puerto Rico can afford. Those are not easy hurdles to clear, and it has taken us years of analysis and negotiations to get to this day. I know this plan will be criticized. Some will say the plan doesn't give creditors enough of a recovery, leaves too much for the government and the people of Puerto Rico. Others will say the plan is too favorable to bondholders and too much of a burden for Puerto Rico. We at the Oversight Board and the stakeholders who support this plan believe we have struck a fair balance under difficult circumstances, under the very difficult circumstances that Puerto Rico finds itself in after economic decline, hurricanes, and now even after earthquakes. So my message today for Puerto Rico is this. To everyone who would like to see an end to the pain and uncertainty of Puerto Rico's bankruptcy-like state, please continue to work with us to usher this plan of adjustment through the court. To everyone who wants us, the Oversight Board, to be gone as soon as possible, please support the plan of adjustment, because the sooner this plan is confirmed by the court, the sooner the Oversight Board will complete the mandate that it was given and can be dissolved. The proposed plan of adjustment is a precondition for all of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Esco. Before we proceed, Professor Skeel, would you like to offer some comments?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please proceed.
As others have said, this is a very important moment for Puerto Rico's recovery. A little over 4 years ago, then Governor Garcia Padilla said Puerto Rico's debt was, quote, not payable. This was one of the key reasons PROMESA was passed. For the past 3 years, PROMESA has kept the debt crisis at bay. For the first 10 months after PROMESA was enacted, it provided for a stay or a standstill on creditor collection that enabled Puerto Rico to stop paying its debt. We then filed the Title III petition in May 2017, which extended Puerto Rico's release from paying its debt. But this isn't a permanent solution. Puerto Rico cannot stay in Title III forever, nor would Judge Swain, the Title III judge, permit Puerto Rico to stay in Title III forever. Nor is it possible, as some might like, to simply wipe out all of the debt. Puerto Rico cannot move forward until it restructures its debt, starts paying back a portion of that debt, and emerges from Title III. Today's filing of the proposed plan of adjustment and disclosure statement is a very big step in this direction. It's been a long time coming. We hope to file the plan before today, but it's an extraordinarily complex process. The proposed plan would significantly cut Puerto Rico's debt, as we've already said, reducing the Commonwealth's obligations from $35 billion to about $12 billion, and counting the Cocina debt, roughly cutting all of the debt in half. We still have a long ways to go. The disclosure statement needs to be approved, there needs to be a vote, there needs to be a confirmation hearing. So we're a long way from actually confirming a plan of adjustment. So today is not a time for us to celebrate. But I think it's not inappropriate to pause to recognize the significance of the step we're taking. I've been teaching and writing about bankruptcy law for 30 years. I give my students exams about all of the legal rules that are involved in the confirmation of a reorganization plan, the prohibition against unfair discrimination, best interest test, and all of the other bankruptcy requirements. The 2 years that Puerto Rico has been in Title III have been altogether different. We've been wrestling with these issues in the context of the biggest public bankruptcy in American history, and one of the most complex, arguably the most complex bankruptcies ever. The success or failure of the Title III plan will have a profound effect on the lives of more than 3 million Americans on the island of Puerto Rico. If this plan ultimately proves to be successful, this will be in large part due to the incredible creativity and hard work of our advisors, including PJT, who you just heard from. They've devised ingenious solutions to some very difficult problems and come up with a plan that I believe is fair to every constituency that is affected. It's been a privilege to work with them and with our staff and with my fellow board members in the effort to propose and negotiate a potentially transformative plan of adjustment. I also would like to thank Governor Vasquez and her administration for her willingness to talk seriously about the issues in the plan. The governor does not agree with everything in the plan, as I'm sure we'll hear in a minute, but she recognizes the importance of restructuring the debt so that Puerto Rico can move forward. We've said since the 7 of us were first appointed 3 years and 27 days ago that Puerto Rico's financial distress is so great that everyone will need to share in the sacrifice. This proposed plan is fully consistent with that. As I've said, I believe it's a fair plan and a plan that would give Puerto Rico a fighting chance for a robust recovery. My hope is that we'll be gathering again in the same location in a few months to celebrate the successful reorganization of Puerto Rico's debt. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Professor Skeel. Before we conclude, I too would like to offer my thanks to my colleagues. You've given of your time. It's been a rather difficult 3 years, and you've done so as volunteers. And so I and many people in Puerto Rico are grateful to you, so thank you. I would also like to thank our staff, our executive director, and our staff for their excellent work. We know that working for the Oversight Board at times can be difficult, and we are grateful for you and for all that you have done for Puerto Rico. Lastly, as Professor Skeel mentioned, we are enormously grateful to the work of the people, the consultants that have helped us in this process, our attorneys, our accountants, our investment bankers. We are grateful to you, and we hope that someday the people of Puerto Rico will be as well. Having said this, would anybody else like to say a few things?
I just want to say thank you to you, Mr. Chair. It's been a privilege to serve with you and to serve with my other colleagues on the board. I have a colleague at work in California now who has had a remarkable career, but one of the things that happened as part of his remarkable career that continues is that he worked for the Department of Justice on the Cerro Maravilla investigation. And as I think about kind of part of my journey, right, in terms of formative experiences in growing up in Puerto Rico, Cerro Maravilla, Huracán Hugo, then we think about where we are today, the circumstances of this summer, the circumstances of Maria, just the extent to which, challenges and opportunity end up being intertwined. I think about the Jueza Presidenta's comments around the extent to which a lot of our rules and a lot of our structures both sometimes end up being the mechanism of challenge, but it's also the rule of law and the Constitution that provides a path to move forward. It's been an incredible privilege to be part of this process, to be part of working with all of you and serving the people of Puerto Rico. I remembered, the Proskauer team, including Scott, who was with us at the beginning and who we lost early on in this journey. The government's team, John Rapasardi, who has been tireless in his efforts, as well as lots of other folks of the O'Melveny team, and just, David, Tom, even people in the Obama administration who started this initial journey, some of which, including Adam, are with us. This is a significant moment, and I just wanted to take note and appreciate all of you, the work that you've done, the opportunity to learn with you, the opportunity to do the best we can in difficult circumstances to forge a path forward within the constraints and the opportunities provided in the law. And as we think about the challenges of Puerto Rico that were so well captured in a very sobering way in the article in El Vocero, I think yesterday, as we think about the rates of child poverty, the decline in population, we also need to think about the opportunity and how do we figure out, thinking about some of the discussions yesterday in terms of the Invest in Puerto Rico, Discover Puerto Rico, and the opportunities to figure out how the ingenuity that was so captured during Maria, when you see the picture of folks driving the generator and the washing machine to the river. Puerto Rico has an incredible ability of figuring out how to be resilient and how to move forward, and I'm hopeful that it's that spirit, the certainty provided by restructuring, that provides us an opportunity to figure out how to grow and how to grow together. So anyway, just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to serve with you.
Thank you, Ms. Matosantos, for your kind words. This concludes the Oversight Board's presentation of the proposed plan of adjustment as filed today in the U.S. District Court of Puerto Rico. I would like to now invite our colleagues from the government to offer comments. Welcome, Mr. Diaz.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today's filing of the Plan of Adjustment represents an important step in Puerto Rico's economic recovery. I want to recognize the hard work of the Oversight Board and their professionals leading to the filing of this Plan of Adjustment. PROMESA is premised on the notion of fiscal responsibility and debt restructurings. Fiscal responsibility is achieved through Titles 1 and 2 of PROMESA, through the fiscal plan and budgeting process. Restructuring matters are addressed through either a Title 3 proceeding, which is a court-supervised debt restructuring process similar to Chapter 9 of the Bankruptcy Code, or Title 6 proceeding, a streamlined process for achieving negotiated modifications of certain financial debt. With respect to restructuring matters, the Oversight Board and the government have largely found consensus and successfully worked together in bringing about the restructuring of more than $23 billion through the GDB Title 6 restructuring, the PRASA 207 transaction, and the confirmation of COFINA's complex Title 3 plan of adjustment. These restructurings involve significant cooperation among the government, the Oversight Board, the Puerto Rico legislature, which enacted enabling legislation to facilitate the GDB and COFINA transactions, and widespread creditor support. Today's filing of a plan of adjustment for the Commonwealth, ERS, and PBA builds upon these successes and marks an important step in Puerto Rico continuing to adjust its balance sheet and ultimately regaining access to the capital markets. It has been nearly 2.5 years since the Commonwealth filed for Title III. During this time, Puerto Rico experienced an unprecedented catastrophic event after Hurricane Maria made landfall and substantially impaired Puerto Rico's water and electric services. Without casting blame on any party, these past few years have also involved moments of significant disagreement and litigation as the government sought to protect the interests of the people of Puerto Rico and its policy-making functions. In order to reset the relationship between the government and the Oversight Board and move the restructuring process forward, the administration has sought to be constructive yet realistic about the steps necessary to complete Puerto Rico's restructuring and put the Title III proceeding behind us. The plan is an important step in that process. A source of historical dispute and litigation between the government and the Oversight Board has centered around pension cuts. As a matter of principle, the government continues to oppose the Oversight Board's determination that the pensions should be cut. However, in an effort to move beyond the issue, the government has agreed to consider the agreement reached between the Oversight Board, certain labor unions, and the Official Committee of Retirees, which is charged with representing the interest of the retirees in the Title III cases. As we believe the plan of adjustment notably provides a mechanism that allows for pension restoration out of certain excess surpluses in future years. Central to the government's consideration of the plan, however, is the government's stated commitment to the priority of pension payments and in practice to take steps where necessary and appropriate to restore and mitigate the impact of any future pension reductions through the exercise of government policy measures in the Commonwealth's budget or through additional sources of revenue. The government's consideration for the plan is also anchored in the plan's significant reduction in Commonwealth debt and cap on payments to bondholders. The plan provides for maximum consideration to bondholders of $14.7 billion, including $11.8 billion in new bonds. In other words, the size of the pie which creditors will share from has been defined. The plan of adjustment, if confirmed, will reduce bond and general unsecured claims against Puerto Rico by approximately 65%. In the government's view, this treatment for bondholders is fair and results in significant savings for Puerto Rico, which coupled with the COFINA savings equates to, on average, $1.2 billion per year for the next 30 years, or approximately $36 billion over a 30-year period. However, because significant economic uncertainty and risk remains on the certified fiscal plan upon which the plan of adjustment is premised, it is critical that the debt level set in the plan of adjustment not be increased. In conclusion, notwithstanding our misgivings or philosophical objections about the board's plan of adjustment, to blindly follow winner-take-all strategy could expose Puerto Rico to years of protracted bankruptcy proceedings and litigation, resulting in greater risk and economic uncertainty. We therefore must be pragmatic and realistic in taking the necessary steps to complete Puerto Rico's restructuring while remaining faithful to the well-being and best interests of the people of Puerto Rico. In our judgment, the plan of adjustment deserves consideration, and the governor will continue to assess whether it offers the best way of finally fixing Puerto Rico's balance sheet. If properly implemented, this could ultimately lead to Puerto Rico's economic recovery and open access to the capital markets. Based on our belief that public policy lies on the constitutional government of Puerto Rico, the governor will consider and express herself to the people of Puerto Rico this afternoon. Over the next several weeks and months, we anticipate continuing to work cooperatively and constructively with the Oversight Board as a plan of adjustment is further refined. As long as the plan first remains consistent with the core economic and financial principles important to the people of Puerto Rico, and second, ensures that Puerto Rico is not left with any unsatisfied claims following emergence from the government's bankruptcy proceedings. If the foregoing principles are followed and these goals are achieved, we can be assured of a plan of adjustment that is balanced and fair, which will serve as framework for prosperous and economic stability of Puerto Rico for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. The time has come now to open the floor for public comments. We fully recognize that the documents were made available only this morning. So I wish to make clear and assure everyone that at our next meeting, we will again provide time for public comment once everyone has had the time to digest and acquaint themselves further with the information presented and published today. However, to the extent that someone would like to make a comment today, pose a question, each person has up to 3 minutes to express their views. Any person interested in a turn, please stand. Once you are recognized, we will turn your microphone on, and please state your full name and your affiliation if you have one, and of course, please speak as clearly as possible. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
My name is Victor Gonzalez. I'm speaking here as a proponent of renewable energy and also as an ordinary taxpayer. I know some of you, and I have known some of you for a long, long time, and like myself, we have been children of privilege, and I appreciate how you are dedicating your time and your efforts to try to do something better for Puerto Rico. I have looked at this plan of adjustment, and I have just one brief remark about it, and then also a brief remark about the Puerto Rico tax expenditure report and some of the things that were discussed yesterday. Regarding the plan of adjustment, you take into consideration, as you clearly stated, three stakeholders, which are the retirees, the unions, and the hedge funds. And you, even though you were provided a chance by the court to try to do a mediation supervised by one of the federal judges, you decided to negotiate with these three parties this plan of adjustment. And this plan of adjustment takes care of them. But there is nowhere in the tax of adjustment that any, let's say, savings will go back to the taxpayers, who are actually the ones who are paying for all of this. Whatever saving is here keeps on going to those three stakeholders, but nothing comes back to the taxpayers. And if you look at your tax report, most of the ordinary private sector taxpayers don't get any benefits on those billions of dollars of benefits that you mentioned, and no improvement will go to them. All the improvements are going to go to give more money to the retirees, more money to the unions, public service unions, or more money to the hedge funds and the bondholders, okay? Remember, the sales and use tax used to be 5.5%. It's now 11.5%. And any savings that is going to come, it's not going to revert it back to 5.5. It's going to go to these three stakeholders with whom you negotiated, without having in that same room maybe somebody representing the taxpayers. And that's the only thing that I see on this plan of adjustment that doesn't seem to add up. The other thing that I'd like to point out, because you mentioned it a lot yesterday, is that report, which is called the Puerto Rico Tax Expenditure Report for the tax year 2017. As we are in a week when a lot has been talked about the environment and climate change and all those things, I'd like to point out that the tax benefits that are going to petroleum, diesel, gasoline, bunker fuel, to natural gas, to coal, to all the fossil fuels add up to $3.7 billion a year. That's how much money we are not collecting from things that are polluting our health and our environment. While at the same time, what I have seen with PREPA's RSA and with things going on in PREPA, is that you are demonizing renewable energy, while at the same time, you are allowing $3.7 billion in taxes not to be paid by fossil fuels. Thank you very much.
Thank you, then, Victor. It's two questions. We'll take them. Ms. Matos Santos will answer the first part.
The first piece is thank you, because you've been a consistent participant of this process, and I think that is an important element for purposes of the discussion and accountability, et cetera. In terms of the issue that you point to in terms of the recognition of taxpayers, I'd say, taxpayers and the people of Puerto Rico are benefiting from certainty. Taxpayers and the people of Puerto Rico are benefiting from restructuring and the substantial reductions in the debt obligations under this plan. The benefit of bringing down, as Ms. Jaresco talked about, annual debt service payments from $4.2 billion annually to $1.5 billion. That is a direct benefit to taxpayers and to the people of Puerto Rico. The restructuring and the creation of an EITC, the path for stable government services, all of the different elements that Promesa made possible, the restructuring, the debt savings, et cetera, are all benefits that accrue back to taxpayers and the people of Puerto Rico. So I think that has been a pretty central consideration to our work, and there's a direct path and a direct benefit to taxpayers and to the people of Puerto Rico from the debt restructuring, both the stability that ensues, as well as the significant savings from what was previously entered into contractual obligations.
Let me just reemphasize that, if I may, respectfully, Mr. Gonzalez. The taxpayer is currently on the hook for $4.2 billion worth of annual debt service. The taxpayer is the primary beneficiary of the reduction in debt service that was negotiated. With respect to having the taxpayer represented, presumably that's what the government is there for in the context of all this discussion. So I do believe the primary purpose and the primary beneficiary of any plan of adjustment like this one is the taxpayer. In fact, the parties that you mention as being beneficiaries are actually the parties who are being impaired in the process because their claims are being reduced. So I think it's flipped around. Actually, the main beneficiary is the taxpayer in this process.
Thank you.
Well, you were paying that before the plan of adjustment. You could have been paying a higher amount if, in the absence of Promesa, in the absence of a mechanism to deal with a debt restructuring, which there wasn't before Promesa, you would have been legally liable. Puerto Rico would have been legally liable and subject to lawsuits by the bondholders to enforce their claims. And that would have led actually to higher taxes, potentially. So what you are saving is the commitment to pay additional amounts, and you are getting a lot of, like Ms. Matos Santos said, a lot more certainty about the obligations and an operating expense level for debt service that is sustainable and managed by the Commonwealth given its current resources. If there are areas of taxation in Puerto Rico which should be looked at because they may be higher than warranted, and you can generate more efficiently taxes in another area to cover your expenses, well, it's something that should be looked at as a matter of tax policy by the government, i.e. the distribution of income. That is actually one of the reasons we wanted the tax expenditure report, so that people, the government, and civil society in general realize what are we giving preferences to, and is there a real reason to give those preferences, or should we reduce those preferences, raise some revenues in that area, and then provide relief in other areas, such as the SUT taxes. But that is a matter for tax policy that should be addressed by the government, and it can be addressed once you have certainty in the level of payments you will be addressing in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Esco, did you want to touch on, address
Just-
the renewables issues?
I don't want you to misunderstand. I think the fiscal plan for PREPA, the transformation plan for PREPA, the IRP for PREPA that is at PREB, all of them have increasing use of renewables, and you know we support that, and we are pressing PREPA to, again, number one, review the PPOAs as quickly as possible to make determination on those that exist, and two, to focus as much as possible on fuel cost reduction through, in addition, greater use of renewables. So I think the board has stated its agreement with you in terms of the importance. It's part of the fiscal plan, it's part of the IRP, and it's part of the everyday effort to reduce fuel costs at PREPA.
Thank you, Mr. Esco. Would anybody like to make a comment? Okay, thank you very much. Since we have no other matters to cover, I move that we adjourn this meeting.
I second the motion.
Then I'd like to ask for a voice vote. Those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
There being no nay votes, the meeting is adjourned at 10:30 in the morning. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming.
An extremely important day, as we anticipated. The adjustment plan was submitted, and it's in essence the start of the end of the bankruptcy of Puerto Rico. It's the end, the culmination of 3 years of work, of arduous work, and we are really pleased that what is being submitted into consideration of the court is to the benefit of our people and fair with the creditors of Puerto Rico. So Ms. Matos Santos will give you a briefing of what we just discussed, which I know is a lot. So let's go. Well, now I will try. Thank you. As our president said, the question is about where are we and where are we going? So we started this case with obligations, contractual obligations of more than 70 billion in terms of bonds, 50 billions in terms of retirement, and the central government, right now the adjustment plan that we're working on, that has just been submitted to the court this morning, works with 35 billion in debt in terms of bonds emitted in the past, and 50 billion in debts to the pension. So this plan works to end the uncertainty, to be able to restructure the obligations, the contractual obligations that Puerto Rico has today, and to decrease the debt to a level in which it is today, which is almost 30% of the recurrent funding, to less than 10%, and to establish limits for the future so that Puerto Rico does not have to be in the current situation. It works to restructure as well the debt for the pension, those who are pensioned, in a way that honors most of that debt. So 71% of those who are pensioned, 74% of those who are pensioned now, and the people that can receive pensions in the future will receive 100% of the pension that they expect. The difference has some cuts of an average of 8.5. Today, the pension funds, there are some obligations, but they don't have money. Part of what this plan of adjustment does is to restructure the debt, the contractual debt of Puerto Rico, and it decreases it from 4.2 billion to less than 1.5 billion. So basically, through this restructuring, we provide the structure to have a sustainable debt, to be able to honor the pension to those who are retired, and to have that clarity of what are the obligations of Puerto Rico in the future, to be able to then continue providing critical services like education, public safety, and social services, healthcare, etc. So basically, this plan, what it's doing is it restructures the debt to today's levels, which are uncertain, to future net levels that are going to be more sustainable, including limits so that in the future the debt will be emitted only when it's going to pay buildings and highways and things that are going to be with us in the future, and that maintains to a sustainable level in the future, basically consistent with less than 10% that the adjustment plan includes. Thank you, Anna. Let's go to Mr. Gonzalez so that he can emphasize some numbers that you can have to add to what Ana Mato Santo has said. And here's some specific numbers. The adjustment plan that was filed today in the court calls to 35 billion in bonds for the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, and its dependents like the public building office. The actual we have as debt, current debt of 72 billion, but we already took care of some bonds, like Cofina specifically. We made some transaction with respect to the government fund, FOMB Bank, and the authority fund. So PRASA and other subjects that we need to cover. So today's topic was 35 billion in obligations in bonds of the central government and other dependencies. This was also the highway authority. And we're going to decrease those 35 billion in value, in nominal value, that is contractual, to 12 billion. So it's a significant reduction, essentially to 1/3 of the cost or the value of what is being claimed. So this means that this annual service of debts of the central government of Puerto Rico, relative to those what is recovered, will go down 28%. That's the obligation. We're not paying it now, but if we're paying it contractually, so 28% of the budget of the central government would be to pay the debt. With this plan, it would go down from 28 to 9%. So a very substantial reduction. So 9%, really under the constitutional level of 15%. That was violence with the emission of debts. We surpass it. So we will take it below to some prudent levels and sustainable levels as we consider them. So those are the key elements and fundamental in terms of the service of debts for the government. In terms of pensions, let's start with remembering that the $50 billion in obligations for the payment of pensions, for that, there are 0 assets that are segregated. So the pension plans that are supposed to receive annual contributions, they were all consumed throughout the years, and there are 0 assets specifically available for the payment of those pensions. So this puts it in risk, and that is what, in effect, we need to protect and restore. But we started from a very weak position for the payment of pensions. In effect, we're establishing trusts for 30 years that will be fed with resources that will ensure the payment of the pensions. This will allow that there will be certainty with the payment of pensions. So the legal reality is that the pensions hardly can be protected they can be protected in a difficult manner in its entirety under the principles of the bankruptcy court between the creditors, considering that the creditors of pensions don't have collateral. They don't have technically priority. So we are achieving some structure with this plan if it is confirmed, and that's why I think that it's good that the pension committee will back it, and it will bring more security and resources and certainty for the payment of pensions. So this is where we are giving some strength to a part of the obligations of the government that currently are very weak, the basis to provide for them. And I also would emphasize, and we cannot underestimate this, that for the public workers that are under Sistema 2000, the 2000, who are under the retirement program system. It is really a system of definite contributions. It is not about benefits. It's like a 401k for those who know the term. These employees, what they contribute, unfortunately, they were mixed with other obligations and other resources of the system, and they were dissipated as well. They were not available there. So these resources that are $1.3 billion, which were contributed by the employees, not the employer, but the employees, they would be restored in this adjustment plan, and they would be segregated and administered independently so that this does not happen again, in which these funds were dissipated in the ordinary and daily operations in the retirement system. So to summarize, it seems to me that after 3 years of hard work, as we mentioned during the hearing, and a lot of difficulty, a lot of obstacles, we have arrived to a place that we can present an adjustment plan that we think is reasonable and equitable in terms of claims of all the parties of this process, and we expect that it can be litigated, it will be discussed, it will be protested by some parties, and we expect that essentially in the way that we talked about it, it will be confirmed by the court. Thank you.
Let's go to questions now, Celia. Good morning. I ask you, what's the projection will we have with respect to the economy and economic development with respect to this plan? Nothing can occur without coming out of bankruptcy. So this is an essential step. Yesterday's meeting was precisely about that topic, to address development, economic development, the ease of doing business, and the structural changes that we are promoting. Many of them require legislation. All those can be done through the executive. It's a joint effort. This, as such, does not make the economy grow, but there would not be a future path if we don't come out of the debt. Selim? So is the economy stagnant? That's what I stated. What I would say, this is a condition, an essential condition to move the economy ahead, because it removes the uncertainty from the debt, from the government. It dissipates the scenery towards the future. It's not perfect. Puerto Rico still has to address competitiveness topics for the future, and we still have to work very hard, all of us, to move ahead. So it is a necessary condition, but not enough, not sufficient for the economic development. El plan se basa en un plan fiscal. En cuanto al PIB, las proyecciones que se han construido están aquí. El punto es, sin presentar el plan, sin dejarlo atrás, sin terminarlo, no podemos llegar a otro punto. Selimar, hello. I have 2 or 3 questions. The first, have you considered there may be, in the short term, any change in the income from foreign companies, that they will be eliminating the incentives to take that as a credit at the federal level that could change the income of the government, the revenues? We have taken that into consideration for many years. It's part of the conversation since we were appointed. It is not news for us. It's contemplated in the fiscal plan. So if that happens, if that revenue is removed, is eliminated, what we trust is that the government, and it will help the government to reach certain solutions so the people of Puerto Rico can count on that contribution. You would fight for it, against it. The other thing is, where does the money come from for the trust, for the pensions? What's the ranking of that 26% that is going to receive a cut? I know there are some people who have very high pensions. How is that going to be distributed? The cut is going to be over those who receive $1,200 in pensions, but not considering Social Security, they would not be in the equation. That affects approximately 40% of the retirees of Puerto Rico. 60-some percent will not be affected. The cut will be for those who make more than 1,200. 60% receives less than 1,200 monthly, so that amount is protected. And if we take into consideration those who are retired today and those who retire in the future, that percentage goes up from 61% to 74%. So most of the people have pensions that is less than 1,200. So the cost will be to those who, the 26% that has more than 1,200 monthly. In different scales, 8.5% over the amount. So it depends of what you receive. If you receive 2,000, it's a larger cut beyond the 1,200. With respect to the trust, the first amount, as Jose Ramon stated, it's 1.3 billion. 1.3 billion comes from the resources that we have today. So there has been an assessment how much money Puerto Rico has today, and a large amount of those resources will go to the trust in the future. There will be annual contributions. That is the difference between what is projected is going to be the expenditures and the revenue. And a lot of that amount will be deposited in the trust in the next 10 years. Lisa, Univision, my question is also related to the cut to the 26%. I don't know if it's going to be different stages or until what year it's going to happen. How is it going to be worked? The cut, when it is established, is going to be towards the future, and it's going to be basically the benefit that person would have received in the future based on the benefits and the math. That the value of that cut will be less in the future with respect to the amount, because the projected benefits in the future are lower than the benefits today. It's 8.5% of the benefit the person receives. It's an average of 200 million annually, and it will go down in the future. Telemundo, I think the confusion is because you said that it's an average of 8.5 of the cut, but at a given moment that that cut was going to be according to the pension. I think that's the confusion. It's 8.4 over the 1,200. It's 8.5% del total, de la pensión total, pero no puedes tomar tu pensión menor de 1,200. Por ejemplo, si recibes 1,250 por mes, no recibes un corte de 8.5 porque no puedes recibir menos de 1,200. Así que es un corte de $50. Es una tarifa fija, 8.5 recorte a la pensión, pero su pensión no puede ser nunca menos de 1,200. La pregunta entonces tiene que ver with what you stated, the speaker of the government here, with respect to the cuts. In principle, the government opposes the cuts, but will consider this agreement with the retirees plan. I would like to know what's your opinion with respect to the government's opinion that will be expanded later on today. First of all, we've had many conversations with the governor and the representatives. We understand their view. We have already set forth our view. It is a very extremely difficult situation. It has to be done because nobody wants a cut for the retirees. With respect to the position that they hold, we'll have to wait until what they'll state this afternoon by the governor, what she will state. I can tell you it's been integrated in the plan. if there is a superávit, a surplus in the budget, that money will be returned for the pensions. That will depend on the fiscal discipline and the economic growth that Puerto Rico will have in the future. We hope they can comply with it so we can restitute their money back to the pensions. Luis Valentin? I have a very quick question with respect to the cut to the pensions. First, the trust that has been created, if I understand well, the money comes after paying the debt, after paying operational budget, and then the rest of the money will go to the trust. Is that the procedure? The first amount comes from the money that is available today. Part of the cash available will be deposited in the trust for System 2000. In the future, yes, it will come the amount in excess of what is needed to pay for the budget, and from that, the contributions, and to pay the debt. The debt, the budget, after, and then the money that will nurture this trust to pay the pension plan. First, we'll pay the pay-go, then the requirements to pay part of the expenses of the pensions from the main budget, the contractual debt that goes from 4.2 billion to 1.5 billion will be paid MISALUD, the different budget parts, items, and the parts that is deposited in the trust from the annual trust. If we don't have any surplus, if you don't meet the metrics, what happens? The obligations established, the plan will be established to satisfy that obligation, and that's part of what will be worked in the future to manage, to meet those obligations and to continue those deposits. Basically, we're in this situation because for a long time, they didn't pay the obligations that they were supposed to be paid. They didn't deposit the money, the monies in those funds, and that's why Jose Ramon stated that we're in a situation that we have 50 billions in debt and no assets. Now we establish monies that will go immediately to satisfy that obligation in terms of the deposits in the trust and the rules for the future to continue increasing those assets. First of all, the pay-go will be paid. It is not the pension are not paid. The reserve fund, the trust, is to manage instability from one year to another. But now we have a system that's a difference with a lot of transparency and groups that are paying attention that things, that those contributions are being made by the unions who agreed to this structure. Remember, we substituted a situation where before they didn't have any assets or priority, and we're giving a structure where they have visibility of the resources. They start with some resources, like Anna said, it's from the current funds that the government has accumulated for not paying debt for 4 years. So you don't start in zero. But at the end of the day, this depends that everybody does their job. And I mean not only the government to run their numbers correctly, but also the unions, the public employees, that you pay attention that the contributions are being made so we don't fall in the same situation of total irresponsibility. No plan can guarantee the future, but can assure at least that there is more visibility. Tenemos que añadir que tiene que tomar el plan junto con el plan fiscal. El plan fiscal ha proyectado excesos a superávits para periodos de aproximadamente 30, para el 2037, y en esos superávits que están proyectados, y esos superávits proyectados después que del presupuesto operacional, pues después antes de la deuda, después de estos superávits, esto va a ir para la deuda según el plan, y el resto del superávit proyectado va a ir para el fondo, el fideicomiso de deuda. The decision to approve, there was no a vote. Was there an executive meeting that was discussed previous to the filing, if that executive occurred, if it was unanimous or not? It did happen. It was yesterday. There was a meeting, executive for Metro.
Good morning. Good morning. I want you to give us more details about this policy of the debt that is going to be followed by the government is going to be included in the adjustment plan. Please repeat the question. Details about the plan of how this is going to be managed, the plan of adjustment, what is included now. The adjustment plan talks about that policy, and the details are going to be worked on between the government and our team. In general, the adjustment plan talks about moving to this direction to ensure many things. One, that the future debt will be to 30 years and not like in the past that it has been to on a long-term debt, and that the debt that has been using is not to pay for recurring expenditures, but for highways, allocated to highways and bigger projects that are going to last for a long time, and that when it's restructured, it won't be for just to submit things for the long term, but for really to have savings and fewer obligations, and basically it works with the limits that there are. Basically, it has the limits that there are today in the Constitution, and it proposes policy that will be more limited in going from fewer, so going for 30 years, so that it can cover all the resources instead of having, like, for example, like we have had in the past, the bonds, the general bonds, and COFINA and that. So basically, so that all the debt that is guaranteed by the resources of Puerto Rico, it counts against the limit, and that is consistent with part of what we're talking about. So the policy is going to be consistent with what the adjustment plan is working on, that it will be to less than 10% of the recurrent resources. So basically, what is specific is being worked with the government. It will be worked with the government, but the adjustment plan talks about having this policy that will be consistent with those principles that I just talked about. And we must say that those fundamental principles of wise spending, management of the debt, really were the base of the management of the debt of Puerto Rico until recent years, and all were incorporated really in the policy dictated by the Constitution. So an opportunity for other media, Bloomberg News, Richard Kasky. Michelle Kasky, está en la línea? Yes, good morning. I had some doubts about the litigation trust that is being made up. So the way that I see it is trust that it is being made up to those that do not want to move forward. They can, you can pursue them or file some complaints in the court for those that don't have bonds, that have bonds for 2012 and 2013. That's the way I saw it. So I asked you if the fee examiner has told you something about this litigation trust, or that if he has to look into them. And the other is whether you could elaborate a little. I had that down. And also if you could elaborate about what are the consuming costs, because I didn't hear anything. I know that in the term sheet, as I saw, there were some consummation costs and that. So I want you to start talk about that. If you could elaborate on what exactly that is. So please, let's hurry. There are other. So the fee examiner has to talk about. We talked about that yesterday. The fees of the confirmation, de la conferencia, la primera. Así que la primera pregunta, el fideicomiso, hablamos de eso esta mañana y el examinador no tendría que decir nada sobre eso, así que no entiendo que sea relevante al fideicomiso de litigio. Sí hay cargos en diferentes partes del plan que va a encontrar que se permiten. Hay un cargo por el RSA, un acuerdo con los bonistas, y también hay un dinero que se ha separado para las partes diferentes del acuerdo. Así que el máximo de estos cargos Pero necesito ser clara en esto. No están pagados por el ELA, sino que vienen de la estructura de la deuda, de los pagos que ya se están planteando en el plan de ajuste. Así que hay un máximo de 300 millones de dólares, pero nuevamente no viene del ELA, sino de la distribución de la recuperación de estos bonos. Did everybody understand that? $300 million that weren't paid by the people of Puerto Rico, but by the bondholders. So it is being reduced from what they get back. So it is being reduced. It's not a fee that is being charged. It's not a statement for a fee for the people of Puerto Rico. Michelle Classy, Bloomberg. Michelle. She doesn't want to, so let's continue. Quisiera, si puedo por un minuto, darle, para esos que preguntaron sobre la política del manejo de la deuda, y sé que respondieron. Si vea el plan de ajuste cuando tenga tiempo, si lo puede ver, entiendo que es la página 62. El artículo 44 habla sobre todas estas partes diferentes del manejo de la deuda. Hay una variedad de cosas aquí. Hay límites qué deuda se puede hacer. Así que específicamente el artículo 44 del plan de ajuste que se radicó está en la página 62 a la 68, algo así. Buenos días. Quisiera regresar al problema de los pagos de pensiones. Según el plan, el servicio de la deuda iría de 4.200 millones a 1.5 millones. Quisiera tener el mismo número para los pensionados. ¿Cuánto de estos pagos se le están haciendo a ellos y cuánto será del luego del plan? Así que primero espero que no estemos confundiendo las cosas. Los 4.200 millones no es lo mismo. O sea, sería contractualmente antes de promesa para ambos, COFINA y el ELA. Así que estamos comparando de 1 a 1.5 billones o 1.000 millones, que sería antes de la reestructuración de COFINA y el plan propuesto de ajuste. Así que esa es la reducción. John Marino, ¿estamos? Ella quiere hacer. La pregunta es la reducción de las pensiones. Es aproximadamente 120 millones anuales en costos de PayGo, que va bajando según transcurre el tiempo, pero empieza como en 120 más alto. ¿Qué es? Disculpe. ¿Conoce el número, la cifra? No. Le daré el número, le podemos conseguir la cifra. El total del PayGo es de 2.2 en el plan. 2.2 en el plan. Jamarino. ¿Podría dar una vista, hablar un poco sobre cuánto de efectivo de cash se pagará a los bonistas como parte de la recuperación? Y también, como sabe, está pagando 1.3 a las pensiones inicialmente. Y también el comunicado dice que tiene algo de 22% de reclamación de PBA. ¿Cuánto más apoyo necesita para que esto pueda continuar? Gracias. Así, en la última pregunta, tenemos hoy 54% del apoyo del bono vintage del PBA. Así que eso es de antes del 2012, pre-2012. Tenemos 11% de la clase del apoyo GEO Vintage, así que entiéndase antes del 2012 y 2013-2014. Y todo este porcentaje incluye a estas dos. Así que es una clase por clase, un asunto de clase por clase. Y esperamos que tengamos más apoyo entre los bonistas. No estoy seguro de cuál fue su pregunta de cash. No sé si es el uso de cash o de efectivo en este plan. Es sobre 4 millones de dólares totales para sistemas, como describimos, 1.3 para los bonistas y otra parte en asignar cargos a las uniones. Así que, ¿cuánto es eso? No tuve la oportunidad de ver el plan completo. es entre 2.000 y 3.000 millones de dólares. Depende de qué manera se finalice. Yo ni saber, no vería. Buenos días, ¿podría dar algo de los 3.000, movimiento de los 3.000 millones de dólares? Mencionó que van a comenzar en un programa de reclutamiento de alcance que se discutirá. Si podría discutir este plan de ajuste, ¿cuándo empezaría y cuáles serían las primeras comunidades que lo están en? ¿Podría proveer un mapa de esos fondos de los 3.000 millones de dólares? Y la segunda de las comunidades para explicar esta propuesta. Y me pregunto cuándo ese programa comenzará y a quién le estaré hablando. Tengo viajes a municipalidades en mi itinerario, así que la primera que tengo entiendo que es a mediados de octubre. Hay Bonito y Barranquitas.
Los 35.000 millones, la división de los 35.000 millones, así de memoria, no te puedo decir, déjame ver si puedo buscarlo. ¿Alguien tiene el documento que me lo puede pasar para no cometer un error? Vamos a buscar la información y seguimos, la vamos a buscar. Estaba confundida porque entendía que el acuerdo con el Comité de Retirados preveía una adjudicación de 175.000 millones, 175 millones, que era lo que se iba a hacer al principio. El plan consideraría de alguna manera asignar fondos a ese fideicomiso y entonces, después de ese periodo de 5 años, entonces era donde íbamos a empezar a tener estas contribuciones adicionales por superávit. Quiero asegurarme. El acuerdo con el comité dice que hay 175 millones iniciales. Eso fue un sentido de certidumbre de cómo comenzaría, dada las proyecciones de superávits. No va a ser menos de 175. Esa es una marca, una referencia. Pero pensamos que va a ser más alto porque el superávit que se proyecta es mayor. Además de 1.300, besides the 1.3 billion and the pay-go, if there was no Title III and restructuring, we would have the assets in zero under Title III and restructuring and the non-payment. We have been paying pay-go. The pay-go continues. The deposits in System 2000 are established. The deposit in the trust, and in the future there is a combination of pay-go and deposits in the trust that will provide stability for retirement plans that they didn't have in the past. Stability they didn't have in the past. Are we done?
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.